you've had some traumatic experiences in your past. How did those affect you moving forward, both in a bad way and also in a good way? And what did you learn from those experiences?
Yeah. Yeah. When I was 16, I was sexually abused by someone in my family. And I didn't tell anyone for a while. And then when I did, as happens so often, I was maybe not believed or maybe made to feel like it was my fault. I didn't know how to handle it. I used drugs for 5 years as kind of an escape. And then thankfully, through rehab and a lot of therapy, was able to process that. It obviously changed my life. And I think a lot of people will sometimes say, well, are you grateful for your trauma because it built you into the person that you are today? And it's not the trauma, it is the resilience that I credit. It's the fact that, first of all, I had tons of privilege and tons of support going through it, right? I had a family who was supporting me. I had resources and health insurance and a good therapist. But I think it was the process of accepting what happened and turning it into, I think, a piece of me. It's not the piece of me. It's not the biggest thing in my life, but it's always something that is there. And when I think back to that younger Melissa who was doing the best that she could, constantly reminding myself that I'm so proud of myself for getting us through that really difficult situation and having so much grace for myself for not knowing how to handle it and just doing my absolute best. Those are the things I think of the most when I think back on it now.
When did you realize you had a problem with heroin? Was there an aha moment? Did it develop slowly over time? And then how did you start to pull yourself out of that?
Yeah, I used drugs in the beginning as an escape. I had been looking for ways to take me out of this experience and my life, and drugs were the thing. I tried other things, they didn't work. Drugs was it. But then over time, I started to realize that the drugs were now the thing. I had to use them every single day to modulate my emotion and my energy. I knew I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. Other people in my life started noticing that they had become a problem. I was very functional for a very long time. And I had like a moment. I was sitting on my couch. I had just been paid. My boyfriend, live-in boyfriend at the time, said, "You need to get help because I can't enable this any longer. I can't support this." And I had a moment where my Vuvu, my grandfather, who was long dead, he just came to me and he said to me, like, "You can do this." And I said, okay. And my boyfriend called a rehab clinic and they happened to have a bed that night. So I really feel like it was some kind of divine intervention that gave me, I think, the confidence in that moment to say yes. And my boyfriend at the time, who wouldn't let me change my mind, even though I tried really hard to on the way to the facility. So it was a slow slide, but I think I knew all along that I had a problem and I couldn't get my way out of it. And I wasn't really sure how I was going to.
Yeah, I can definitely identify with that. So I'm sober, and I knew I had a drinking problem for a long time, at least 5 years. And I kind of always said to myself, all right, we can quit when it gets bad enough.
Right.
But slowly over time, it just keeps getting worse. And you have all these moments where you go, well, I never said I'd do that, but I did that. And then it's the next thing. And sort of like you, where there's almost this divine moment. It's like one morning I just woke up and it just became very clear to me that if I kept at that, it was not going to end well. And it was almost like I saw this kind of door opening, but it was like on a hinge where it was going to slowly close. And it's like, if you don't walk through that right now, like this is your chance. And so I took it, and here we are, more than 10 years later.
I remember looking at my pay stub thinking, you're either going to blow all of this on heroin and probably kill yourself, or you're going to say yes to this thing. And so I think of those as glimmers. You woke up with this glimmer. And if you don't seize it right away, it disappears so fast. And I just feel like we are both very lucky to have recognized it and seized it when we did.
When you get out of rehab, what are the first things you did, though?
Well, the first time I went to rehab wasn't particularly successful, and I think that's really common. The only thing I did the first time I got out of rehab was I stopped using drugs. And I didn't really change anything else about my life. And I was really white-knuckling my way through it. And so after a year, I relapsed. There wasn't anything in particular that happened. I was just somewhere I shouldn't have been, and somebody offered, and before I knew it, there I was. The second time, I recognized that I was going to have to change every single thing about my life if I wanted to maintain my recovery. And I didn't think I would make it back a third time. And that was the moment where I thought to myself, well, what would a healthy person with healthy habits do? What would that person do? Because I didn't know that person. I had never set foot in a gym. I never cared about what I ate. I was still smoking cigarettes. And I thought, well, a healthy person would get up in the morning and go to the gym before work. And I started doing that. I started getting up at 5 a.m. and going to the gym and meeting people at the gym who didn't know my history. They didn't know that 2 weeks ago I was snorting heroin. They just knew that I was this new person that was new to the gym and I was showing up consistently. And being able to see myself through their eyes, I think, was an enormous blessing. I had a glimpse of this person that I could be, or that I already was, but I couldn't see myself as that person yet. And that was the cascade that sort of led me to all of the other healthy habits I adopted, that setting boundaries and dropping friends and really sticking up for myself and eating well and going to bed earlier and quitting smoking. And that was the catalyst, was just this one thought. What would a healthy person with healthy habits do today?
Yeah. Wasn't there a group that you met at the gym? I think it was a group of, and I've heard you say this, it was a group of women who ran together. Did you get linked up with them?
I did.
And how did that help you?
Yeah. I ended up meeting these women at the gym. I met one and we became friendly. And then she said, hey, I've got this other group of women that I run with. We're all different paces. We're all different ages. The age span, I think, was probably something like 30 years. But if you ever want to come run with us, I had never run a day in my life. I had never exercised a day in my life. And so I started running with them. And one person would always go slow to keep up with me. And we became fast friends. We did races together. We hung out together. We celebrated when someone got married or when someone had a baby. And I think that group of friends also really anchored. I didn't tell them about my addiction for many, many months until we had, gotten closer. But I don't think I ever properly said, thank you for bringing me into your group. And thank you for allowing me this self-image that I felt I didn't deserve at the time.
Yeah. I feel like that goes back to the first time you get out of heroin, nothing really changed. And then the second time, you start going to the gym, you meet all these new people, you make all these new connections, and that total environmental change shifts everything. I mean, for me, the first thing I knew I needed to do was reach out for help and ask someone for help. And I met a good group of people. There was this one guy in particular. I came up to him and I just said, hey, I need help. Can you help me out? And he was probably 55. Super smart guy, well-read, spoke Russian. And he just started working with me and things started moving. And I later learned 3 months into being great friends with this guy, he had stage 4 cancer.
Oh, wow.
And it was like, you are taking time out of this clock that is clearly ticking and it's ticking to help me. And I'm a moron, right? And it was like, once I heard that, was almost like, there's no going back now. Like this guy and he ended up passing away, unfortunately, probably a year and a half later. But I just think back to that, and I'm just like, that is like what a human should be. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Wow. What a gift.
Absolutely.
What a gift.
So you get into health and fitness. When did you quit smoking?
Pretty quickly. I mean, you can't go to the gym and also be a smoker. I found out very, very quickly. And I was never really addicted to cigarettes. I was like a casual smoker, so I quit very quickly.
Yeah. So you kick cigarettes, you're in the running club. You start going down the rabbit hole of health and fitness. How did this eventually lead to the Whole30?
Oh boy, Whole30 was 2009. So it was quite a few years later. I credit my recovery to the year 2000.
Okay.
So through healthy eating and through running, I discovered CrossFit. I became very enamored with CrossFit. I started writing a little CrossFit training blog because at the time forums were the big thing. It was pre-social media days. And I developed quite a following through that forum. And so I started my own blog and we had gone to a seminar about paleo eating. That was all the rage in early 2000 CrossFit. And that seminar matched some of the information that my original co-founder was doing, some of the research he was doing into dietary factors that may be influencing his sister's rheumatoid arthritis. And he realized through this research that it's possible that legumes or gluten could be promoting these RA symptoms. So those two kind of merged. And after a really challenging Olympic lifting session one Saturday, he said to me, we should do this kind of squeaky clean 30-day dietary experiment. We just kind of eat this paleo way. And I think I was eating Thin Mints at the time, straight out of the sleeve. It was Girl Scout cookie season. And I was like, yeah, when do you want to start? And he said, how about we start right now? And again, I'm an addict. I have that like all or nothing, off or on, like, let's do it. And I put the Thin Mints away and I said, let's do it. And that was the start of what was to become the very first Whole 30, just this 2-person self-experiment.